Candace Owens walked onto the view stage with a calm, focused expression. The applause was mixed, polite claps from some, hesitant murmurs from others. She gave a small nod toward Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, Whoopi Goldberg, and Sarah Haynes, each watching her with wary smiles that did not reach their eyes. Whoopi leaned in first, her voice carefully measured. She said, "Candace Owens, welcome back. Not everyone thought you'd sit here again after the last time." Candace held her posture still. She said, "I don't mind tough rooms. I prefer honesty to comfort." The audience shifted. Some clapped once. Some stayed silent. Joy crossed her arms, her voice already tinged with sarcasm. She said, "You say you want honesty, Candace, but every time you show up here, you spin your version of it." Candace turned slightly toward Joy. She said, "It's not my version, Joy. It's what happens when you don't outsource your thoughts." Sunny spoke up, tone polite but edged. She said, "You've become known for that line, don't outsource your thinking. But critics say you don't just speak your mind, you mislead people. Does that ever cross your mind?" Candace looked at Sunny, her voice calm. She said, "I'm here because too many people have decided disagreement is the same thing as misinformation." Sarah cut in softly. She said, "Let's be specific. You tweeted last month that certain protests were staged. That made headlines. Do you stand by it?" Candace didn't blink. She said, "I stand by the truth. Some protests are real. Some are funded. If that makes people uncomfortable, they should ask who profits." Joy leaned forward, eyes narrowed. She said, "So you're saying people exercising their rights are just paid actors?" Candace's tone sharpened just a hair. She said, "No. I'm saying some people exploit genuine pain to push narratives. And some of you repeat it without question." A tense murmur rippled through the audience. Whoopi's eyes flicked toward Joy before settling on Candace again. Whoopi said, "You've made a career out of calling out what you say are double standards. But sometimes it feels like you enjoy the chaos more than the solution." Candace gave a faint, humorless smile. She said, "Maybe the chaos is honesty finally showing up to the party." Joy snapped, "That's rich. You call everything a conspiracy except your own talking points." Candace's voice stayed steady. She said, "I call it a conspiracy when the same people who lecture the country about democracy can't handle a different opinion on daytime TV." The audience gasped, a short burst of claps and a few scattered boos. Sunny's voice stayed calm. She said, "But there's responsibility that comes with a big platform, Candace. Don't you worry about the impact of your words?" Candace said, "Yes. That's why I choose every word carefully. What I don't worry about is your approval." Joy shot back, her tone rising. She said, "You want honesty? Fine. I think you're reckless. You show up here. You rile people up. You leave division behind." Candace turned her chair more directly to face Joy. She said, "And you sit here, pretending your side has a monopoly on compassion, when you can't tolerate a single voice that challenges your script." Joy's mouth opened, but no words came out for a moment. The studio lights seemed brighter, the air thicker. Whoopi said, voice firmer now, "All right, let's not turn this into a screaming match." Candace didn't raise her voice. She said, "Whoopi, I'm not screaming. I'm just refusing to play along." Joy leaned back, her arms crossed tighter, eyes locked on Candace. She said, "You always do. But today you're not getting the last word." Candace's reply came quiet, but hard enough to hit. She said, "Joy, it's not about the last word. It's about saying the word you're too afraid to say." The audience stirred. Some clapped once. A faint tension pulled at the corners of the room. Joy's lips tightened into a strained smile. She said, "You think you're so brave, Candace, throwing out these accusations like you're the only honest person in America." Candace didn't blink. She said, "I think honesty makes people uncomfortable when they've made a living off pretending they have moral authority." Sunny spoke up, tone soft but edged with disbelief. She said, "So you're saying you're the only one at this table who cares about the truth?" Candace looked at Sunny evenly. She said, "No, Sunny. I'm saying the truth doesn't care who's comfortable." Sarah cut in, her voice careful. She said, "But you don't see any contradiction? You talk about free thought, but you feed people the same lines every show. Candace turned slightly, voice firm but not raised. She said, "You know what's really the same every show? This. This idea that challenging the groupthink is somehow dangerous." Joy's voice rose. She said, "Because it is dangerous when you call real people's struggles staged to get clicks." Candace leaned forward slightly. She said, "Dangerous is pretending that suffering is only real when it fits your headline." A hush moved across the audience, a mix of claps and gasps, the quiet kind that holds the room together by a thread. Whoopi cleared her throat, her tone tense. She said, "So what do you want, Candace? You come here, you swing at everybody, you act like you're the only one awake. What's your point?" Candace's tone softened for half a heartbeat. She said, "My point is if this table really cared about people, you'd stop selling them fear for views." Joy slammed her hand on the table once. She said, "That's enough. You do this every time. The righteous act, the victim act." Candace didn't flinch. She said, "I'm not a victim, Joy. I'm just not your pawn." Sunny spoke up, eyes steady. She said, "You're not a victim, but you thrive on making people think you're under attack." Candace turned to Sunny. She said, "I'm under attack when people call free thought an attack." A smattering of applause came from the back rows. Whoopi glanced toward the crew but didn't signal a break. Joy leaned in again, eyes sharp. She said, "You know what, Candace? You say you care about the truth. Then look this audience in the eye and say you believe your conspiracies." Candace's tone dropped, words slow and deliberate. She said, "Joy, the only conspiracy here is the lie you feed these people every day that you're the moral center of the world." Joy's mouth twitched, but no words came out fast enough. The audience buzzed, half clapping, half murmuring. Whoopi cut in, her voice flat. She said, "If you're going to sit here and accuse people, be ready to back it up." Candace's voice stayed calm. She said, "I've been backing it up my whole life, by showing up and saying what you won't." Joy's chair squeaked as she pushed it back an inch. She said, "Maybe you should walk out instead of playing martyr." Candace leaned back, crossed her arms, and said evenly, "Maybe you should." A few people gasped at that, the tension too thick to disguise with polite applause. Sarah's tone was barely above a whisper. She said, "Ladies." But no one moved. Joy's hands were trembling slightly on the edge of the table. She said, "You sit there with your smug look like you've got it all figured out." Candace didn't raise her voice. She said, "No, Joy, I don't have it all figured out. But I'm not pretending I do while telling people what to think." Whoopi's tone dropped to a low warning. She said, "Candace, you've made your point. You can leave the moral lectures for another time." Candace leaned forward, her voice almost soft. She said, "That's the problem. It's never the time, is it? When people push back, you call it disruptive. You call it dangerous. But you never call it necessary." Joy's eyes flashed. She said, "You think you're necessary?" Candace's answer came without hesitation. She said, "Truth is necessary. If that makes me necessary for 5 minutes on your show, I'm fine with that." The audience stayed dead silent, waiting for someone to move first. Sunny spoke, her voice tight. She said, "So what? You think we should just let you come here, insult this table, and walk away like you won something?" Candace turned to her, voice steady. She said, "I didn't come here to win. I came here to remind people they don't have to lose themselves listening to you." Joy pushed her chair back fully this time. She said, "Get out. Get off this stage if you're going to keep running your mouth." Candace slowly stood up, adjusting her jacket. She didn't raise her voice. She said, "Thanks for proving my point. Conversation isn't welcome. Control is." The audience split, some clapped, some booed. The noise felt half swallowed by the lights. Whoopi pointed toward the crew. She said, "Let's go to break." Candace didn't wait. She turned to the audience one last time, her voice clear but not theatrical. She said, "You're allowed to think for yourselves. Remember that when they tell you not to." She stepped away from her chair. No handlers. No applause sign. The camera stayed on Joy for a beat, mouth half open, eyes tight with something like rage mixed with disbelief. Candace walked off stage. Her footsteps echoed on the polished floor. The band didn't play her out. Whoopi turned back to the table, her voice flat. She said, We'll be right back. The lights dimmed. The screen cut to black. But the moment didn't fade. By nightfall, clips were everywhere. Some people cheered. Some were furious. And somewhere, in living rooms across the country, people asked themselves if it was better to stay silent or to say the thing no one wants to hear. Candace never said goodbye. She didn't have to. The point had already been made.